So tonight's session is going to be two kind. We're going to take CSS and then we're also going to take Figma, how to make use of Figma, you know, and bring whatever design the UI UX persons designed to bring it to life. How you can make use of Figma board. But for now, we're going to start with styling. So yesterday, the person who took styling spoke about different ways of styling. So let me just go through it very briefly again. We have three types of styling. First of all, I already have my VS Code open and I have a folder TJP2, but there's nothing here. So let me just create a file. Let me call this index.html and then I'll just fill it up with boilerplate. I don't like this document here, so I'll just call it CSS session. Yeah. Oh, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Vincent Von. On Slack, I'm known as the coordinator. So yeah, so that's that. Okay, so we have the boilerplate and we've given it a title. I would like to also open this on live server. Okay, our live server is already up. That's cool. Let's see. I think it's 5,000 something, something, something. Oh, you know what? Just to save time, let me stop the live server and then start again. We don't have time. There's a whole lot to cover. All right. Okay, so this is our page, index.html. All right, so let's give it some content. Let's give it this is a class on CSS. Then let's add like 4 paragraphs and let's just give it the same content. I'm holding down Alt and I am clicking. And then I'll say this is just random text. All right. Okay, so we have this now, and if we check our page, this is what we have. H1, of course, is like it has more. It's more bold and bigger and all of that. Okay, all right. So how can we style this? Because CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet, and it's used to style your page, more or less. That's what CSS is for. So how do we go about styling this? Like I said, we have three different styles. The first one is called inline styling, meaning for each element you want to style. Let's say we want to style this third element here, the p tag. We have h1, p, and p. So if I want to style this, if I want to use inline styling, I will just write style here. Thankfully, VS Code makes this easy. So I will click on the style and then I'll say, what do I want to style? I want to style the color. I want it to be red. And if you check our page, you see that this third item now has a color of red. So using inline, you can also give it a font size. Let's say the font size I want it to be like 40 px. Uh, px is just like a unit used for measuring. We're also going to talk about that. So 40 px is bigger. So we've done this with inline styling. Um, how CSS works is you have attributes. We have declarations. So this is the attribute already. This is the p tag, and then we are declaring that we want the color to be red, we want the font size to be 40 px, and all of that. So we have selector and we have a declaration. So that's how CSS works. Now for inline styling, you just have to put a style and then you write your declaration inside the element you want to target. Now there's also something called the internal styling. So in internal styling, in the header, the opening and closing header, you would have to, let me take this off. Sorry. So let's go back to how it was before. Yep, that's fine. So in the header, you have to write style, and then inside here, we're going to target the elements. So I'm saying for every p tag here, I want the color to be red. And if you check our document, you see that we now have this is just random text. Of course, the H1 was not targeted. That is why it was not affected. It's just the p tags. So if I want to target the H1, for instance, I can just say, okay, as for the H1, I want your color to be blue, for instance. And then that happens. So now we're targeting the H1. So again, you have a selector and you also have a declaration. So that's how it works. We're still going to come back to how all of this functions, but let's just go through the three types of styling elements. So we're done with the second style. Now, the third and the one you'll be using most is called an external style sheet. So that means that uh, up till now we have been styling directly on this HTML file. Yeah, but that's not best practice for most circumstances anyway. For most scenarios, you want to style in an external file. So those files are always called whatever.css. That's how it ends. Just like HTML files are called whatever.html. So here I'm going to name a file, create a new file, and I'm going to call it styles.css. Inside the style.css, I'm going to target the p tag, and I'm going to say I want your color to be red. Let's see what happens. It doesn't work. Now why didn't it work? It didn't work because it has not been linked. So to link this style.css to our index file, in the header, you just write, again, VS Code makes it really, really simple. You don't have to like remember all this stuff. It's good to know it, but you know, we're not in the 80s, so so we have powerful tools like VS Code that makes all these things easier for us. So you just write link and then you go through different options and just select the CSS one. Now you have successfully linked both files. But if you check, you see that the color we applied still is not reflecting. It's not reflecting because this file is called styles, but here we are linking style. So if I were to add the S and we check the side back, you see that it's now working. It's now working properly because now you have properly linked your files. So anytime you try to link an external style sheet with your index.html or whatever file you are working with, make sure that the href, which is the link to that file, you got the name correctly. There is no typos and all. That's the first place you should look if your applied stylings are not working. Your applied styles are not working. So yeah, so that's about that. So let's go back to what I was saying about selector and declaration. So now we made a selection of P, the P tag. That's what we are selecting. And we are declaring that all the P tags here, we want your color to be red, we want your font size to be let's make it 80 px in size, and see it's very, very large. Yeah. So that's how that works. But you may be wondering, what if I do not want all the P tags? I want just maybe the second one to have a color of green or whatever. How do I fix that? That is where classes comes into play. Classes and IDs. Now you can attach a class to an element. For instance, I can come here and say class. This class I want you to be called green, for instance. Okay, no, let me not call it green. Green is somehow can be very confusing. Let's call it third. Let's just call it third. Let's just call it third. Now if I come here and I select the class, if I say third, all right, so I've given this third, and now I've come here to select third, and the color is red and the font size is 80. Does that work? No, it does not work. It does not work. Why? Because for you to select a class, you have to preface it with a dot. So you write dot third, and now if you check here, you see that this element that has that class is now affected. So again, to target a class, you have to preface the targeting with a dot. Yeah, so that's how classes work. There's also another thing called an ID. So let's say, okay, let's just give this a class of sorry, an ID of second. All right, let's just call it second. Okay, now if I want to target an ID, if I say second and I say, okay, I want your color to be blue this time around, and I want the font size to be 50 px, and let's check. This is the second item here, but it will not work. Okay, let's try adding a dot in front of it like we did the other one, and let's see if it works. Nope, still doesn't work. So how to target an ID is you have to use a pound sign or a hash sign. So you have to say hash. That's how you get a hash sign. And then once you come back, you see that it's now selected properly because you selected it the right way. So that's how that works. So to select an item, like to select a specific item, you can add a class on ID, and then to target the class in the external style sheet, you use a dot, but if it's an ID, you use a hash sign. So that is that about that. Let me just check back. Okay, okay, all right. So everything is still fine. If you guys can't hear me or whatever, you can post on the chat box, and somebody may may tell me, like inform me that okay, we can't hear you, but that's fine. All right. Okay, there's something else I don't want to skip, and that is the fact that after each declaration, a semicolon is not optional. So, for instance, had it been I said color is equals to red, and then I did not end it with a semicolon, and I started with font size, blah blah blah, you'd see that there's now an error. There's now an error. If I check, the whole red thing happening on the third element goes off because I did not separate both declarations. So I have to separate both declarations, and then it will work. Also, of course, if it is just one declaration, then it would not be a problem. So, for instance, had it been it was just color red and that's all, there's no semicolon, it will still work. It will still work. But I think for best practices, it's best, even if it's just one, it's best to just close it up with a semicolon. VS Code would ordinarily close it for you, Seth. You don't have to actually manually close it. For instance, if I say font size, I say blue, you know, I don't have to type the closing semicolon. VS Code takes care of that for me. I said font size blue. What the heck? I should have said like 50 px or something. Sorry guys about that. Okay, all right. So let's just continue. Um, let's talk about what's called uh, combining selectors. So for this to work, uh, let me add a class here. Still, let me add a class of third. Let me add. Okay, yeah, third. Yeah, sure. So this is fine. This is fine. This is fine. Okay, so let me add a class of. Sorry. This shouldn't just be third. What am I doing? What am I doing? Okay, so let me just add a class of paragraph. Let's just call this class paragraph, and I'm going to copy it. Like I'm going to give it to everything, all the whole paragraphs. I'm going to give them the same class. So paragraph. I'm just copying and pasting. No, I'm not doing anything like anything strange. It's just copy and paste. Okay, so now we have four items that have the paragraph of a class of paragraph. Of course, everything will stop working here aside from the second, which is targeted here. Yeah, but everything else goes off. So let's target. Let me copy everything off, and then let's target paragraph, and let's give it a color of crimson, and then a font size of 40 px. Of course, all the whole paragraph they share the same class, so they have a font size of 40 px. But what if I want to combine stuff? For instance, I want to say, you know what? I want every class that has paragraph and second to have a border. Should I use border? Okay, yeah, let's use border. So yeah, all the whole paragraphs have a font size of 40 and color of whatever. But I want a border on this third paragraph, on this first one, sorry, rather, this first paragraph. So what can I do? Well, this first paragraph is different from the rest because it has a class and it also has an ID. So how do I combine both of them to target just this guy, something that will apply to just this guy here, while the rest are unaffected? What I can do is I can just say dot paragraph hash. Oh my god. Okay, yeah. Dot paragraph hash. I think it's second. Let me check. just to be sure. Yeah, it's second. So dot paragraph hash second without any space. And then I'll say I want you to have a border of solid. Don't worry about what's happening here. Just it's not a big deal. We'll get there today. But I want to say solid 2px green, for instance. Now, as you can see, just this guy, because I was able to select multiple selectors. So I was able to select the class and the IDs, and then I was able to get this. So the point is you can select multiple selectors if you want to target a specific thing. For instance, all of these share a paragraph. Something I want to also mention is that you can have multiple classes. For instance, all of them they have paragraph, paragraph, paragraph. But they can also have, let me take off this ID. I don't think I need the ID actually for this. So we can just write first here, write second here, write third here, and write fourth here. So because they all share paragraph, paragraph, everything concerning paragraph here, let me take this off, still affects them. But if I were to go to the second, I want to target the second only. I can just come here and say, okay, I want paragraph and second, and um, I want your border. Let's still go back to border. I'm trying to stop myself from doing something. So, oh my god, 212 is too much. And let's say blue. Yeah, let's say blue. All right. So this second one is selected. If we wanted to go to the fourth one, for instance, same thing. It just says dot paragraph, which is a class, and dot fourth together without any spaces. We'll be able to select and style just that specific item. But what if we want to select both of this first and this last, first and last? What can we do? Same thing. Let me take this everything off. I will just say, please pay attention to this. First, so I've selected the first one. Then I have to put a comma and then come down. I just like to arrange my code like that. You don't really have to come down. Paragraph dot font, and then you style them. So you can say font size is like 50px, for instance. So as you can see, the first paragraph and oh, let me take off this H1. The H1 can be very, yeah. So off you go. All right. So the first paragraph and the second paragraph are selected. So the point is you can select multiple. I didn't even have to put the paragraph. I could have just said first and fourth, and it will still do the same thing. So I could have just said uh, first and then fourth, and it will still give you the same behavior, which is the same thing. So that's how you select multiple selectors. You combine selectors. You target multiple selectors using your comma. After you select one, then a comma, you select another because you may want to apply a specific styling to different completely different elements. So just target each of them with a comma and then add your declaration or your styling, and it would work. We spent so much time here. Okay, so let's just move on. From time to time, I will be coming here to check. Okay, yeah, we are still good. All right, so let's move to the next thing we want to talk about. We want to talk about specificity. It's a very big grammar, specificity. So what it means is that you have you have items that would always override items. When we talk about cascade, cascade is from top to bottom. That's how CSS works. So if you have stuff and there is a conflict. For instance, let's say let me look at this first and let me see what I want to do here. Okay, let's say for instance we have paragraph. So we are targeting paragraphs. Let me take this everything off, and I'm saying paragraph. I want your font size to be uh let's say 80px. You see, it's very very big, 80px. Now, if I were to come to the font, which is this font, and I say font, I want your font size to be uh smaller. Let's just say 30 px for instance. You see that the fourth element is smaller. Okay, let me just yeah. Hopefully you guys can see it. I think it's clear. So this is the first, second, third. Then the fourth is smaller. Why is this overwriting the paragraph? It's overwriting it because it came last in this style sheet. Okay, so all paragraphs is 80 px. Oh, that's cool. It applies that. Then it comes down and says, okay, fourth is the last and fourth is 30 px. So it's going to overwrite this guy at the top here. It's going to overwrite him and say, you know what? Nope. I came last. I have specificity. I have a higher specificity. So I am going to work. But one way of fixing this is we can say, you know what? I want all the paragraphs to be important. Okay, no, not. Let's leave important for now. So one way of fixing this is, of course, we can rearrange that so that the first will come first, while the paragraph comes second. Now everything is because the paragraph rule comes last in the style sheet. It will be applied. It will disregard the fourth because the fourth came first. But one way of fixing this is to use specificity. So if I am very specific, so I can just say now I need paragraph and I need fourth. So I am selecting paragraph and then inside paragraph I am saying the fourth, the one that also has a class of fourth should have this font size. The specificity is higher. So even if paragraph comes last, this will still be applied because it has a higher specificity. So if we come back to our document, you see that this is smaller. This is smaller because it has more specificity. It's more specific. It's not just paragraph. Okay, which paragraph now? All the paragraphs. But now we're saying no, not all the paragraphs. Okay, so we have paragraph, but we still want the fourth class inside that paragraph. That's the exact thing I am targeting. And CSS knows that okay, yeah, this specificity is higher and that solves that. Another thing that we can do to fix this is we can add a class. So for instance, if you go back to our HTML and we have an ID rather, an ID. So let's try this with the second one for instance. So I can say the ID is going to be called second P. Second P, that's the ID. So second P is going to come first. It's going to say an ID of second P. And I'm going to say the font size is let's say 40 px. Let's make it smaller. So even though the class comes last, IDs have more specificity, higher specificity than classes. So it will still apply. So if you have an ID, just know that if you are styling, and you want to style an ID will always have a higher specificity than a class. So wherever you target even if the paragraph comes last and is the class comes last, it doesn't matter. It's an ID, so an ID will always come before. It will always be applied, and whatever is contradicting it would be ignored. Yeah, that's the grammar. That's the word. Okay, so that's that about that. There is still more. There is still more. What if we want this class anyway to still have higher specificity? What we can do is we can use important. So we can just say here important. And then if we check, we see that everything is still so important is like you are saying whatever style I want to add here. I don't care if it's an ID, I don't care if whatever. I want this guy to always take first position. So yeah. So if you really have a styling and you want that styling to always be true, you don't want anything to override it, one of the options you have is to use important. Although I would warn you that you have to use it sparingly because sometimes you may just be tearing your hair like, what's going on? Why is this stuff not working? Not knowing that you've added important somewhere else on the file that's overriding your style. So use this sparingly. That's just my advice. But of course, with practice and time, you would learn all this stuff. So it's not a problem. You can also make your mistakes. It's fine. Um, yeah. So I think the last thing I want to say in this section is let's go back a little to let's take everything off here. Sorry, except for paragraph, of course. Okay, all right. So what I want to say is that whatever, like, inline styling is always higher. So for instance, if I add a, sorry, I wanted to add a class, sorry, style rather, not class. So this is inline styling now, and I say the font size is, I want the font size to be 40. Let me see what we have before. Sorry. Okay, this is large, but I want it to be small. So I want it to be 40 px. So which one is this? Font size. Okay. Sorry, let me take this off, the important off. All right. So the font size, even though we have paragraph here saying it's 80 px, but once you do inline styling, this would override whatever we have in the external style sheet. So the point is that any styling you add here would always override whatever you have in the external style sheet, unless of course you add the important tag, that attribute that I mentioned previously. Yeah, but aside from that, the inline styling will always override the external styling. The inline styling will also override the internal styling, the one we did here. So if I say paragraph would have a font size, okay, sorry, I didn't target that correctly. So it has to be like this. Okay, so paragraph will have a font size of 200 px. So the rest are applied. The rest are applied. But this one that there is an inline styling would still override whatever we have here. So as you can see, the inline styling, the internal styling overrode this guy, while the inline overrode this guy. So this is supreme. This is second to the best, second highest rather. Why this is the least highest. Unless of course you add your important tag. Okay, all right. So guys, let's just move on. Let's just move on. So hopefully you guys understand a bit of specificity. We can always go back to watch the video and refresh your memory, go through the resources and all of that. But we still have a lot to cover. So let's just quickly go through them. We also have what's called inheritance. So let's say I want to add a color. Let me take off this style. I just don't like inline styling. I don't know. I don't like it at all. So let's say we want to add a a color to the paragraphs. Let's say we just have one. We just have um sorry, just a second please. Let me take off all of this. I just want one class. I don't need all these classes again. Just one class. So let's say I want to add a color to these guys. Or let's say we have a document that all the text on the document is going to have a color of a shade of black, not really black, like 2222222. Sorry, it should be 6. So 222222. Yeah. So what do I do? Do I now have to like go to all the elements, a span, a div, blah blah blah, and then be adding a color of that color? No, it doesn't make much sense. So what I can do is I can go to the body. We want to talk about inheritance. So if I go to the body, for instance, and I say I want all the color to be let's use a color that you would easily understand, like we'll see. Let's say brown, for instance. Now everything on the file is going to be brown. Everything on the file, even though we did not actually. Let me take this off. This is too much. Let me go to the paragraph and let me make it. Let me make the text to be 20 px, for instance, font size 20 px. Okay, let me make it a little bit bigger, 40 px. That's better. So we did not apply any color to the text. We just did font size. But because of the body has a color of brown, then everything inside the body, because this is the body, everything is inside the body actually. So if you set anything to the body, everything inside would take whatever you have set, would inherit those styling. So that's how inheritance works. Yeah. So let's give another example. For instance, let's say all of this is wrapped inside a div. So this is a div, and then I want to duplicate this guy. So these are just shortcuts. Don't worry about that. You can type them manually. So I want to give this first div a class of 1 and then give the second div a class of 2, for instance. Now, let's say I want all, let me take off all this whole body stuff going on here. I like the paragraph, it's fine. Okay, so let's say we want all the whole elements inside the div that has the class of 1. We want all the color to be green, for instance. I can just come here and say 1, I want all the color to be green. And then all the color inside this element would be green. Why the last, okay, let me give it a border. Let me give it a border of 10px solid green 2. And then let's do the same thing. Let me say for the 2, I want the color to be crimson. Sorry, it should be crimson. And then I want the border to be the same thing, 10px solid green. Sorry, crimson. Hopefully I'm pronouncing this word well, oh. Crimson. Okay. All right. I'm going to give it a width. I don't like it spanning all across the page, so I'll give it a width of 50%, and this guy too, I'll give it a width of 50%. Right. So as you can see, I didn't have to like target each individual stuff and started adding paragraph. No, I just targeted the title, sorry, the parent container, and added style into this container, and then everything inside the container would take after that styling. So that's how it will inherit whatever is inside the parent container. And this parent container is also a child of the body. So if I were to add something to the body, it would also take whatever I added to the body. So if I say, for instance, the body, I want your font family to be, I want your font family is just basically how your font would look. We'll still come to font family. So I want your font family to be impact, for instance. And you see it affects every other thing inside the body. So the text, how the text displays this, it will change. Let me comment that out. So this is how it was before, but now that we've added a font family to the body, everything inside the body would inherit that font family. So that's how inheritance works. Again, you would know more of this as we continue. We still have like 5 different topics to quickly run through before we take your Figma class. So let's just do them. They are not like really hard. They are very simple stuff. The next is colors. We've done font color, and I think you guys know how to do that. You just add a color, and then you add color, and then you add your color, which is green. Yeah, so that's how that works. So you add color, then you add a color, which is green. Um, Next thing as it relates to color is a background. So let's say, for instance, I want to add a background to the body. I can just say a background color, of course. Um, Now the body is white, so I can just say I want the background color of the body. Okay, let me not do body. Let me just change for each of the boxes. So for the first box, I want your background color be uh let's use blue. Okay, that's terrible contrast. Let's use white smoke. All right. So if you take notes, the background of this box is now this color. Guys, give me like 5 seconds, please. I have to answer somebody. I'm sorry. 5 seconds. All right. So let's continue. I'm sorry about that. Okay. All right. So that's how that works. Um. Okay. So yeah, that's for the background color. We can also add, of course, we can come here and say the same thing. Background color. I want you to be yellow, and the box would just be yellow. So that's how background color works. We want to also move to border. We've done border. Border is basically this whole border across each element, across the elements. So um, I just want to say something. Let me quickly say something about the border. Now I can just come here and say border color, and I would say white. No, sorry, I would say green. Let's use green. And if you check, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because for border you have to specify the kind of border, the kind of border, the width of the border, and then the color of the border. and that's what this shorthand is for that I used previously. So I would say border. I want the type to be solid border. I want the width to be 10 px, 100 px. Oh, no, that's crazy. And I want the color to be green. And that works. You understand? We can also use dotted and a couple of them. I think you have to check that online. But yeah, dotted is also another kind. So you can have dotted borders, and that works fine. So that's that about colors, how to use colors. Then we had we've made use of with of percentages. We've made use of px. We've made use of percentages. It's just to measure size. That's basically what percentages are used for. Uh, units, sorry, are used for px, percentage, rem. There's also one called rem. Now, rem is 16 pixels. So if you say one rem, then you're talking about 16 px. So for font size, instead of 40 px, I can just say, oh my god, I'm terrible with maths. So let me just do the calculation. I think it should be like five. Sorry, 2 point something. So if I say 40 divided by 16, that would be 2.5. Yeah. So 2.5 rem. That's the font size. So if I were to write 2.5 rem here, it's the same thing as the 40 px. So that's just rem, how rem, like the difference between rem and px. And it can be overwritten. Like you can change your rem to mean not 16 px. The default is 16 px, but you can change that to be 10 px, for instance, or whatever. But for now, let's not worry about all of that. We'll still get there. So that's that about units. Of course, like we did here, we made the width to be 50 px. I could have easily said, okay, the width of this container, I want it to be 100 px, for instance. You see, the container is very small. It's not 100 px, very, very small. I can say 300 px, and it's a bit bigger. Yeah. But instead of trying to do, let's say I would just want half of the page, instead of trying to calculate, trying to get something that works, I can just say 50%, and it will just give me 50% of the page. So, in my opinion, I use percentages a lot, especially for width. But of course, if you want to use for text, you want to style text, increase the size, it's good to either use rem or you use your pixels. Please don't use width if you're styling text. Yeah, that's for uh, divs and all of that, which you would of course know about as we continue. Let's do one more thing. Sorry, we still have four more things to do actually. Four more things to do. So let's quickly go through them. We have what's called background image. Let's quickly do that. I would like to do that for the body tag. So I want to add a background image to the body. So I can just say I targeted the body tag, but let me I have Luffy here. Luffy is also this guy here, Luffy, and I love Luffy a lot. So I'll drag this Luffy image that I've already downloaded. I'll put it inside the folder so that I can easily access it. And then I'll just come here and say background. I'll use background, just background. I'll say background, then I'll use URL, and I'll say I want the image inside here. So luffy.jpg, which is this luffy.jpg. So that's what I'm adding inside this URL. And if I check my site now, we see that we now have Luffy in my background. Hooray! So Luffy is now in my background. There's a couple of things you should know. Let me just take off this background so that you can see Luffy well. Yeah, so this is Luffy. Um, there are two things I would like to say about this background. We can add a background repeat and make it no repeat. Yeah. So had it been this image of Luffy was really really small, and I did not add this whole no repeat, you would find out that the images will be duplicated. So there'll be different, still the same images, but they'll just be in blocks all around the page. But if you do no repeat, then it will just be one picture. Secondly, it may be so small that it doesn't cover the whole page. So what you can do to fix that, you can just say background size and then make it cover. So once you make background size cover, it will cover your whole body. If it is for a div, like a container like this box, you can also do the same thing. And don't forget to add these two elements that would help to make it look better. Okay, just to make sure our page is still like very visible, I'll take off the background image and come back to how it was before. All right. So we've spoken about font family, we've spoken about font size. Let's just talk about font weight. So font weight is basically how thick you want your site your text to be. For instance, this text is not very thick. Like it looks normal, it's the normal weight. But you can increase it. You can say, okay, I want the font weight to be as you can see it starts from 100 to 900. So let's try 700. Yeah. So you can see it's now like way thicker, way thicker. Yeah. So that's how font weight works. You can just play around with it. You can 400 is the normal. Yeah. You can go lighter depending on the font. You can go thicker 500 and all of that. So that's what font weight does anyway. It just thickens your text. Let's talk about typography. That's the second to the last topic. Typography, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about text transform first. So, for instance, we have all this text in regular font text style, you know. But what if I want to capitalize everything here? What I can do is I can go to paragraph and I can say, I want your text transform. Oh, okay, yeah. I want my text transform to be capitalized. Sorry, not capitalized, uppercase, rather. Uppercase. And everything here would now be uppercase. The same thing happens. You can also say lowercase as well, and everything will be lowercase. And then capitalize will just capitalize the first letter in each. Yeah, the first letter. So TI will just be capitalized. So that's how text transform works. Um, to talk about text decoration, I would like to add something to this one. I would like to add a link here. So I'll just use my A tag. I'll make it a blank link by using the pound sign or the hash sign. And then inside the opening and closing bracket, I'm going to write take me to Google. So, so this is what we have here. Take me to Google. Let's style it up a little bit. Let's just go to, let's say, A tag. The A tag we're going to have a font size of 50 px. Make it big. Yeah. And then ordinarily it comes with this underline. That is the default decoration of a link. Yeah, but what we can do is we can change that. We can say, okay, you know what? I want your text decoration to be none, and that will take away the underline from the link. So most times that's what we use the text decorations to do, to remove the underline from text, from a link rather, a link. Yeah, most times that's what we use text decorations for. So that is that about that. Now, lastly, I know you guys have been very like I don't know. You guys are awesome. Thanks for your patience and all. So let's just talk about padding and margin, and then we'll call it a day. Now, to work with padding is basically the spacing within inside an element, while margin is outside an element. That's just the head and tail of padding. For instance, this box, I want to add a padding so that there is space inside because this text is too close to the left hand side. So to do this, I can just target the box, let's say the one for instance. I can just come here and say I want the padding left to be let's say 2 rem for instance. Now if I check, you see that there's now a space the left hand side. Now had the top is not affected, right is not affected too, but you wouldn't know because the text didn't flow all the way to the end. But had it been there was sufficient text, you see that it's still very close to the edge. But it's clear that we added the padding here. Now, if I were to take off the left and just say padding, it will apply it to all top, left, bottom, right, everywhere. Yeah. So, but many times you would want to use padding or padding left to use very specific. Okay, I want it just at the left hand side. Now, what if I want to put a margin between both of these boxes? Now, I'm coming outside of the box. I'm saying, I want space. This guy, you are too close. I'm not your husband. I'm not your wife. I'm not married to you. Why are you this close? I want to add space in here. How I can do that is I can just add a margin. So I will say margin bottom. We have top left, top, right, and bottom. So here I will just say margin bottom to this first box. Let me try that. So I'll still do two rem. I'll just imagine bottom two rem, and then it adds a bit of spacing here. Of course, you can use how many rems you like. You can use pixels. You can say 32 pixels instead of rems, whatever. Anything is fine. It's whether I use rem or percentage or but of course for something like this you would want to use either pixels or rem. Please guys get comfortable with pixels or rem. Percentages would have to come later. Of course you can always learn about percentages yourselves, but during your whole project phase and a project you would soon start to create, you would have to use you would have to make use of mostly pixels or rem. Yeah. So I think that is basically all we want to take today. We spent a whole lot of time talking about the basics of CSS. Like I said yesterday, there was a misunderstanding. That was why the CSS class yesterday was just like really brief, and we didn't actually cover much. But hopefully this was helpful. I would like to stop recording now before we take any questions. Before then, we'll move to fix.